All right, welcome back. I think we've wrapped up the Pemilu Indonesian elections. So let's try center our attention back to Sabah here. We've sort of went all over the place, first Malaysia as a whole, then neighbors Indonesia. Now let's bring things back home here just to wrap it up. So I think for almost all our Saban listeners here, it's a given fact to know that it's an intrinsic fact that Sabah is home to a diverse range of ethnic groups, cultures, and all kinds of people from different cultural backgrounds here. So, of course, the ones that people associate Sabah with in terms of cultural ethnicity is usually KDM, Bungus, Tausug, and all those kinds of indigenous groups here in Sabah. However, I'm going to make it a bit different here. I'm going to talk about a special kind of demographic here that is not indigenous to Sabah, but was brought here during the British colonial era, which is that Sabah is home to a substantial amount of Pakistanis here. Of course, when they were brought in here during the British Empire, back then Pakistan wasn't a country. It was part of a larger group called the British Raj, which encompasses modern day India, Pakistan, parts of Afghanistan, and parts of Iran. So they were brought in here to act as auxiliary forces for the British Army and for the British Royal Police here. So they came throughout is a migration period that happened for 150 years. So it's in a way it's a similar situation to how the Chinese and Indian population sprung up in what we call here in Malaysia, and Pakistanis here in Sabah is a very similar kind of story. So and just for a lot of the listeners here, I'm actually also mixed Pakistani. I'm mixed Pashtun, which hails from North Pakistan and southern Afghanistan. So we call ourselves Pashtun, also Pathan, which also encompasses almost, I think, more than 100 sub tribal groups and sub ethnic groups. So it's a very diverse group of people. Pakistan itself is a very diverse group. So we're just going to hone in here on Sabah. Then that I would say most of the Pakistan population here are of Pashtun descent. And you could see them all along Sabah in the kedai runcit or even some business contractors as well. So you'll find from all kinds of economic backgrounds, a very diverse group of people, mostly centered in areas such as Beaufort, Putatan, Keningau, which is considered sort of like the heartland where most of the Pakistani migrants, how do you say, made their homes here in Sabah and treated exactly the same as every other Sabahan here. It's a very interwoven within the fabric of Sabahan society that sometimes you could see that someone who looks a bit, let's say, for someone who's never been to Sabah, they come here, doesn't know much about Sabah, they see someone that may have, how you say, Middle Eastern looking features. Most probably they are of mixed Pakistan descent. It's a very very interesting situation here. So it goes to show how diverse we have it here in Sabah. We even had a chief minister who was of Pakistan descent, who had Pakistan mixture, which was Tan Sri Musa Aman. And even we have many politicians, seasoned politicians also, who are of mixed Pakistani descent. So, of course, I'm just speaking from my perspective here, being part of that group, some coming from that group. But for you, Hafiz, since you are also Sabahan, has this always been something you noticed, or is it just like sort of like a fact of life here growing up as a Sabahan?
I mean, sorry, can you repeat your question? Got disconnected a bit.
So I was just asking you that for me, it's something I noticed because it's something I was raised up to know that is sort of part of my heritage here. But for you, growing up as a Sabahan, was it always something that was sort of ingrained in you that this is just a normal thing here in Sabah, or was it always something that's a bit out of the ordinary?
As a millennial who was born in the late 80s, I think my generation has already seen a lot of, I mean, our peers also Pakistani Sabahan. So I think it was not that alien to us that we never seen a Pakistani as a Malaysian. Maybe when we see Hollywood movie and then we just look to our side and say, "Hey, you look alike." So I think the the thing was there, and we. At least for my generation, I think it's not a shock that, and we just uh, get on together very well. I think it depends on how dealing with your friends. But I want to say, like, I might be thinking during whatever you mentioned just now, that do you think that Pakistani Sapahan has the highest ratio of being a politician compared to across the board? Like if we have Bajau, the KDM, compared to the population. Because I don't have an official statistic of Pakistani Sabahan, but I can guess that it much fewer than KDM, right?
Oh,
And
definitely.
also much fewer than Bajau. So if you want to talk about Bumiputra Muslim, Bajau is the largest, but you want to talk about Bumiputra non-Muslim, KDM is the largest. Now we have maybe Semenanjung or Sabah. And for the listeners, for the benefit of the listeners, I'm not, I don't have a part of Pakistani in my blood, but I am a Bugis descent of Sulawesi. So some people say that I was heir to a throne in Sulawesi. Yeah, but I don't know if it's true or not. So these people you might find on social media. So I'm joking. I'm joking. Totally joke. Or am I? Okay. So that's that. And so that's why I am very passionate when talk about Indonesia in our podcast, because part of, well, whole of me actually came from Indonesia. So I actually loving that. So yeah, that's another question, ID, to you.
Mhm.
Do you think this is the highest ratio compared to population? And then secondly, you talk about like how I grew up with maybe Pakistani friends or family, right? One thing that I noticed, the term pra all only be used by my batch or my peers, my generation. To pra to means that someone of a Pakistani descent. Okay, is this a generation thing? Is this a slur, or is this something that you can use across generation? Even your grandfather or grandmother would understand the word pra, and you describing someone of Pakistani descent in Sabah. So these two questions for you, Adi.
Okay, so let's put the first question when it comes to the ratio of politicians. I would say there is, it's all, when it does happen, it's very obvious. And I think that does feed into the perception that, yes, there are many people of Pakistan descent actually entering into politics. But I think on looking into why does that happen is because, let's say that you're ethnic group that's not indigenous to the place that you were born in or moved to, right? You would try to find some kind of representation or some kind of means to ensure your survival or for your family and your clan, because uh, Pakistan culture is quite clan-ish, very clan-based, not too different from uh, older Chinese societies. So it's sort of like, in a way, a survival instinct. You're put in a very different environment that um, your culture and heritage that is passed down is not applicable. So you need to find a way to carve out your own narratives. And I guess that's the best way to do so is through politics. It's the best way to establish yourself as a public figure. But it's not just politics as well. If you look at business as well, there's a huge amount that you would notice that are Pakistan owned. And because of that, it goes a bit different from, let's say, the typical idea that usually businesses, a lot of them are held by the Chinese, right? So it's very I mean, it's a very obvious. It's kind of different in a way. So there's that. I think because it's not exactly considered like a mainstream group in Sabah, it becomes more obvious. You tend to notice it, and then it kind of feeds into the perception that, oh, there's actually a lot here that's involved in politics here. Okay, and for the second question, when it comes to pra, because when Pakistanis sometimes meet each other, they sometimes call each other pra. Um, this is actually a word that how do you say, used across almost every generation in a way. Of course, I would not call someone who is much older than me pra. I would call them, let's say, uncle, right, or something like that, pakcik, stuff like that. It's usually reserved like to people of maybe closer age. Uh, Maybe the minimum is about 10 to 15 years. So we would call each other that. It's just kind of like an identifier, just to, in a way, kind of a solidarity kind of thing. So where does the word pra come from? So I've had two stories of how it came to be. It came from the word uh, pendatang and somehow became corrupted to pradatang. Then it became pra. Another one is pranakan. So it's a lot of ideas of how that word came to be. I think someone else who is more immersed in that that sphere would have a better answer, a more concrete answer. But I have a feeling that it comes from another word and slowly evolved into to a slur, or it could be a language corruption of something else. So that's just something to point out. But usually, this is word that's mostly exclusively used from between someone of Pakistan descent to another person of Pakistan descent. It's not really common. It's not commonly used by people who are not of Pakistan descent in Sabah. But sometimes it can be mistaken as such because sometimes some people of Pakistan descent may look more Middle Eastern, let's say Arabic or something like that, and get mistaken as such. So it's hence it's not really used when it comes to people outside of that ethnic group or coming descending from that ethnic group. But it's very funny because it's just something that gets thrown around. Sometimes you meet people, let's say if you are Pakistan descent, you meet someone else of Pakistan descent, you just sort of know, and you call each other that. And if someone else and they return by calling you pra as well, it's kind of like just an affirmation, okay, that we are of mixed Pakistan descent in a way. So yeah. Um, Usually the best common way to identify is usually the nose, the facial hair, the eye structure. That's how you usually can tell.
Another thing that I think I want to highlight is that I think Mamaks in Penang is equivalent of Pakistani in Sabah, because they both came from the same subcontinent, and then they both assimilate into the Malay culture and tradition. And just to add on how you said just now, like maybe because it's seen because they are not indigenous to Sabah, so it's seen as more prevalent in politics. I think also why we see Pakistani today involved in so many politics in at least in Sabah is, I think, because similar to how Chinese got into politics, because I think they're very strong economically speaking, so they wanna defend their vested interests through political way. So that's why they involve in politics, because they have a community to be defend, like commerce community that rely on political aids or whatever. So I think this is I think another way that why Pakistani more prevalent in terms of ratio, because I don't think I still don't have the numbers, how many Pakistanis in Sabah, but I think much less than KDM or Bajau, which dominantly is uh, habit dominantly living in west part of west coast of Sabah. So I think, yeah, that's an interesting topic that you brought up today, Eddie,
Yeah.
and listeners know a little bit more about you. Yeah, I think that's great.
And they know that you're maybe descended from royalty.
Maybe someone claimed that, so I think, I don't know. It could be true, it could be not true. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so I
All right.
mean, just giving you like the listeners a heads up that just goes to
Mhm.
show how diverse Sabah is, indigenously speaking and non-indigenously speaking. Like Hafiz mentioned, there's a lot of parallels between Sabah and Pakistanis and Mamaks. across Malaysia. Um, like it's really true to say that a lot of almost every uh, person of Pakistani descent in Sabah has adapted themselves to the Malay Muslim culture. It is very very different from people from the motherland in Pakistan itself. It's very very different. So in a way, some Pakistanis have more cultural affinity for Malay culture than they do a Malay Muslim culture than they do in Pakistan proper. So um, if you still have kind of a very nebulous idea of a lot of the Pakistans in Sabah, they're not too much different from the Malay Muslim culture that is also here. It's very well adapted here. That essentially it's like just like every other Sabahan, just with its own set of slight differences compared to the rest of the state and nation itself. So there you go. I hope this does give some kind of nuance to a lot of the listeners here that Sabah is very diverse. It's a huge, rich cultural history, both local, both indigenous, and how do you say, extant in a way.
Yep. And that wraps up the episode of Pakistanis in Sabah. So we will be seeing you guys on the next episode, which I mean next week, and we will be talking about the different topics from now, obviously. And any last word from you, Adi?
Yeah, just want to say thank you everyone for listening. Maybe I might have made a few errors in what I've said, so I do apologize for that in advance if you feel like some things were missaid or wrong. But this is just two guys talking, giving our opinion. So obviously there is some room for error, and I think we will keep on trying to do better each time as we continue with this podcast. As time goes by, we hope to refine, we hope to improve and get better at this whole business of giving podcasts of tidbits of valuable or good information for you all to keep in mind and think about. So that's for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the benefit of social media is whatever that you say stays on the internet, and if you say something wrong or an error, I think the system will correct itself by commenting down below, "Hey, stupid, it's not that." So I mean, once we get the comment like that, I think we know we made some errors. So until then, keep listening to us. We don't have a research team or script writer for us, but hey, we will strive for that one day, and so that we can produce better content out there. That's it for our Copitum Council this episode, and see you guys next time. Goodbye for now.